Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the U.S. Meridian, watching the stars through the main view screen. 300 years had passed since humans first met other species in space. Now they were part of something bigger, called the Galactic Confederacy. But Elena still felt the same wonder every time she looked at the endless black between worlds. The Meridian was not the biggest ship humans had built, but it was one of the fastest. Elena's crew of 60 people had been flying through space for 8 months now. They were mapping new star systems and looking for planets that might hold life. It was important work, but most days it felt routine. "Captain, we're getting some strange readings," said Lieutenant Sarah Kim from her station. Sarah was young but smart. She could read sensor data better than anyone Elena had ever met. Elena walked over to Sarah's console. Numbers and graphs filled the screen, but Elena could not make sense of them. "What kind of strange?" "Metal, Captain. Lots of it. But it's not moving like asteroids should." Sarah pointed at a cluster of dots on her screen. "Look at this pattern. These objects are too. Organized to be natural." Elena felt her heart beat faster. Finding something unexpected in space always meant danger or discovery. Sometimes both. "How far away?" 2 hours at full speed, Captain. They're in the asteroid belt around the 4th planet. Elena thought for a moment. The Galactic Confederacy had rules about unknown objects in space. She was supposed to report anything unusual right away. But she was also supposed to investigate threats to human ships. If these objects were dangerous, her crew needed to know. "Set course for those readings," Elena said. "But keep our shields up and weapons ready." The next 2 hours felt like 20. Elena's crew ran every scan they could think of. The results made no sense. The objects were definitely artificial, but they were huge. Each one was twice the size of Earth's biggest warships. There were over 200 of them floating in space, like a ghost fleet. "Captain," said Marcus Chun, the ship's chief engineer. Marcus had been fixing ships longer than Elena had been alive. "These readings can't be right. The power signatures we're seeing. No ship needs that much energy just to float in space." "Maybe. They're not just floating," Elena said. She had a bad feeling about this dot. When the Meridian finally got close enough to see the objects clearly, Elena's jaw dropped. They were ships, but unlike anything she had ever seen. The hulls were smooth and curved like living things, but made of metal that seemed to shine with its own light. Strange crystal formations grew from the sides like frozen trees. Even covered in space dust, they looked beautiful and terrible at the same time. "My God," whispered Dr. James Wright, the ship's science officer. "Captain, these ships are old. Really old. Look at the impact scarring from micrometeorites. These things have been floating here for thousands of years, maybe more." Elena studied the formation of ships on her screen. They were not scattered randomly. They formed a defensive pattern, like they had been protecting something when they died. "Any life signs?" "None, Captain," Sarah reported. "But the power cores are still active. Whatever happened to the crews, it didn't damage the ship's main systems." Elena made a decision that would change everything. "Prepare a boarding party. I want to see what's inside one of those ships." "Captain," Marcus said carefully, "shouldn't we report this to Confederacy Command first? Unknown alien technology is supposed to be reported immediately." Elena looked at the ancient fleet floating in the darkness. Something about those ships called to her. They had been waiting here for so long, keeping their secrets. "We'll report it," she said. "After we know what we're reporting." It took 3 hours to prepare for the boarding mission. Elena chose her team carefully. Marcus for his engineering skills, Sarah for her sensor expertise, Dr. Wright for scientific analysis, and 4 security officers, led by Sergeant Rodriguez. They wore full environmental suits and carried enough air for 6 hours, The boarding shuttle felt tiny as it approached the largest ship in the formation. Elena had seen big ships before, but this one made her feel like an ant approaching a sleeping giant. The hull stretched away in all directions, covered in symbols that hurt her eyes to look at directly. "There," Marcus said, pointing at a section of the hull. "That looks like it might be an airlock." The ancient airlock responded to their approach like it had been waiting for them. Lights flickered along the hull, forming patterns that seemed almost like writing. The airlock door, larger than the Meridian's cargo bay, opened without sound. Elena's team drifted inside and found themselves in a chamber that could have held their entire shuttle. The walls were covered in the same flowing script they had seen. Outside, when the outer door sealed and atmosphere flooded the chamber, Elena's suit sensors showed the air was breathable for humans. "That's impossible," Dr. Wright said. "How does a dead ship maintain perfect atmosphere for thousands of years?" Elena did not answer. She was staring at the inner door, which had just opened to reveal a corridor that seemed to stretch forever into the ship's heart. The hallways were built for giants. The ceiling rose 5 meters above their heads, and the passages were wide enough for 10 people to walk side by side. Everything was clean and perfect, like the ship's crew had just stepped out for a moment. "Captain," Sarah said, her voice shaking slightly, "I'm reading massive computer systems throughout this ship. They're all active. It's like the whole ship is one giant thinking machine." They walked deeper into the ship, following signs they could not read toward what Elena hoped was the command center. The architecture was beautiful in a way that made her feel small and sad at the same time. Whoever built this place understood things about space and time the humans were only beginning to learn. The command center, when they finally found it, took Elena's breath away. The room was a perfect sphere, with control panels flowing along the curved walls like frozen water. In the center stood a chair clearly designed for someone much larger than any human. "Look at this," Dr. Wright called from one of the side panels. "These data cores are still active. If I can interface our portable computer with their systems." "Do it," Elena said. She had come too far to turn back now. When their computer connected with the alien systems, the command center came alive. Holographic displays filled the air, around them showing star charts of the entire galaxy. But this was not the galaxy Elena knew. This map showed thousands of civilizations spread across every spiral arm, connected by trade routes and communication networks. "Captain," Sarah said softly, "according to these dates, this map is over 4 million years old." Elena stared at the display. 4 million years ago, the galaxy had been full of life and civilization. Now most of those systems were empty, their stars still burning, but their worlds silent. What had happened to turn a galaxy of thousands of species into the few dozen that made up the current Confederacy? As if responding to her question, new displays appeared. These showed the final logs of whoever had commanded this ship. Elena could not understand the words, but she could read the emotion in the flowing script: fear, desperation, and finally, grim determination. "They were running from something," Elena said. "This whole fleet, they weren't exploring or conquering. They were fleeing." But even as she spoke, Elena realized that was not quite right. The ships were arranged in a defensive formation, yes, but they were not protecting themselves. They were protecting something else, something they thought was more important than their own lives. Elena looked around the command center one more time, memorizing every detail. Whatever secrets this ancient fleet held, she knew her life would never be the same after today. The moment she had chosen to board this ship, she had stepped across a line she could never cross back. Somewhere deep in the ship's computer systems, something stirred. Ancient programs began to wake up, responding to the presence of new life after eons of sleep. The test was about to begin. Elana's team spent the next 4 hours exploring the giant ship. Every room they entered was larger than anything built by humans. The corridors curved and flowed like they had grown instead of being built. Strange metals formed patterns in the walls that seemed to shift when Elena looked away, and then back again. Marcus ran his hands along one of the walls in what looked like an engine room. "Captain, this metal is not like anything we know. It's warm to the touch, but my scanner says it's been dead cold for thousands of years. The whole ship feels alive," Dr. Wright said from across the room. He was studying a panel covered in symbols. "But my readings show no biological activity at all. It's like the ship itself is sleeping." Elena nodded. She felt it too. The ship was not just a machine. It was something more, something that watched and waited. "Sarah, any luck with those data cores?" Sarah looked up from her portable computer. She had been trying to decode the alien. "Information for 2 hours. I'm getting fragments, Captain. The ship's computer is old, but it's trying to translate for us. Look at this." Sarah's screen showed images of tall, graceful beings with 4 arms and faces that seemed to change expression even in still pictures. They moved through cities that floated among the clouds of gas giant planets. Their art was beautiful beyond description. "The computer calls them the architects," Sarah said. "They built these ships. But Captain, look at the timeline." The screen changed to show a graph that made Elena's heart sink. The architects had not been alone in the galaxy. Thousands of different species had lived and worked together across millions of star systems. Trade flowed between worlds. Knowledge was shared freely. The galaxy had been a place of peace and growth. Then the graph showed everything starting to disappear. World after world went silent. Whole systems stopped communicating. The network of civilization began to break apart like a web with too many cuts. What happened to them all? Elena asked. Dr. Wright found part of the answer in another data core. "Captain, you need to see this. The architects were not just another species. They were gardeners." Elena frowned. "Gardeners?" They helped younger species learn and grow. When a new species discovered fire or built their first spaceship, the architects would quietly help them. They gave knowledge when it was needed. They protected peaceful species from aggressive ones. They kept the galaxy stable and safe. Elena studied the holographic displays around her. Images showed the architects visiting primitive worlds and leaving behind tools and knowledge. Always carefully, always slowly, so the younger species could grow at their own pace. They were like teachers, Sarah said, but teachers who never let their students know they were being taught. Marcus pointed at another display. Then what went wrong? Why did everything fall apart? The answer came from the ship's final log. Entries. Elena watched as the holographic displays showed the architect's last days. The images were broken and hard to understand, but the fear was clear. Something had come from the center of the galaxy. Something that destroyed not just planets and ships, but the very idea of civilization itself. The architects called them the Devourers. Elena could not understand all the words, but she could see what they did. Wherever the Devourers passed, space itself seemed to become empty and cold. Not just empty of life, but empty of hope. Empty of the possibility that life could ever exist there again. "They eat everything," Dr. Wright said in a whisper, "not just matter and energy. They consume the patterns that make civilization possible. After they pass through a system, that system can never support intelligent life again." Elena felt cold despite her heated suit. How do you fight something like that? The answer was in the architect's final choice. They could not stop the Devourers. Nothing could. But they could save something for the future. They gathered their greatest ships and filled them with everything they had learned over millions of years. Art, science, philosophy, technology. The memory of every species, they had ever helped. This ship is not just a warship, Elena said, understanding finally. It's a library, a museum. They saved everything they could. Sarah's computer chimed with a new translation. Captain, look. At this final message, the words appeared on her screen in simple human language. For those who come after. For those who carry the flame when we cannot. The burden passes to you now. Do not let the light die. Elena stared at the message for a long time. The architects had not fled from the devourers. They had made a last stand to buy time. Time, too. Prepare this gift for whoever came next. Captain, Marcus said carefully, we should get back to the ship. We need to report this to Confederacy Command. Elena nodded, but as they prepared to leave, something changed. The lights in the command center grew brighter. The holographic displays shifted and moved. Dr. Wright's scanners began detecting new activity throughout the ship. Something's happening, Sarah said. The ship's computer systems are activating. All of them. Elena felt the ship wake up around her. It was not threatening, but it was powerful. Ancient systems that had slept for thousands of years were coming back to life. Can we still get out? Yes, Captain, Sergeant Rodriguez reported from near the exit. The path back to our shuttle is still clear. But Elena found herself reluctant. To leave, the ship was trying to tell her something. She could feel it reaching out, testing, trying to understand what kind of beings had found it. Just a few more minutes, Elena said. I think it wants to communicate. The holographic displays changed again. Now they showed not the past, but the present. Elena saw her own ship, the Meridian, floating near the ancient fleet. She saw other human ships scattered across known space. She saw the current members of the Galactic Confederacy, all of them young species still learning their place among the stars. Then the display showed something that made Elena's blood freeze. Far away, at the edge of the galaxy, something was moving. The Devourers had not stopped after destroying the architects. They had continued their work, slowly consuming everything in their path. And now they were getting close to Confederacy space. How long do we have? Elena asked. The empty air dot numbers appeared on the display. Elena could not read the alien symbols, but Sarah's computer translated them quickly. 50 to 60 years. Captain, maybe less if they speed up. Elena closed her eyes. 50 years seemed like a long time, but she knew it was not. Not when facing something that had destroyed millions of civilizations. Not when the current Galactic Confederacy had maybe a few dozen intelligent species, most of them barely able to travel between stars. The architects left this fleet for us, Elena said quietly, for whoever found it. They knew someone would eventually discover it. Dr. Wright nodded slowly. The question is, what are we supposed to do with it? Before Elena could answer, the ship's computer spoke to them. Not in words, but in images and feelings that appeared directly in their minds. Elena saw herself standing in this same command center, but it was clean and bright and full of purpose. She saw humans working alongside the ship's systems, learning and growing and preparing. The ship was offering them a choice. They could take the knowledge and run, try to hide somewhere the Devourers would not find them. Or they could accept the responsibility the architects had carried for so long. They could become the gardeners, the teachers, the protectors. Captain, Marcus said urgently, my readings show massive power buildups throughout the fleet. All the ships are waking up. Elena opened her eyes and looked around the command center one more time. The architects had faced this same choice once. They had chosen to fight, knowing they would lose, so that others might have a chance to fight better. We need to get back to the Meridian, Elena said. And then we need to make the hardest decision humanity has ever faced. As they left the ancient ship, Elena felt its attention following them. It was not done with them yet. In fact, Elena realized their real conversation was just beginning. The ship had been sleeping for thousands of years, waiting for someone worthy to find it. Elena was not sure if humans were worthy, but she was beginning to understand that worthiness might not be something you were born with. It might be something you became by making the right choice when everything depended on it. Behind them, the ancient fleet continued to wake up. There, systems reaching out to each other like old friends greeting after a long sleep. Soon, Elena knew they would want an answer to their unspoken question. Would humanity accept the inheritance the architects had died to preserve? Or would they turn away and let the galaxy face the devourers alone? Elena looked out at the stars and wondered if she was strong enough to make that choice for all of humanity. Elena and her team barely made it back to the Meridian before everything changed. As their shuttle docked, Sarah's sensors went wild with readings from the ancient fleet. Every ship was now fully awake, their power systems humming with energy that had been sleeping for thousands of years. "Captain," Marcus said as they hurried to the bridge, "the energy output from that fleet is incredible. If they wanted to destroy us, we would not even know it happened." Elena nodded grimly. She had felt the power of those ancient ships when they woke up. The Meridian was a good ship, but compared to the architect fleet, it was like a rowboat next to a battleship. On the bridge, Lieutenant Kim was staring at her screens with wide eyes. "Captain, you need to see this. Something is coming from the flagship." Elena looked at the main view screen. A beam of soft light was extending from the largest architect ship toward the Meridian. It moved slowly, like it was being careful not to frighten them. "Should we raise shields?" asked Sergeant Rodriguez. Elena thought for a moment. If the architects wanted to hurt them, shields would not help, and something told her this was not an attack. "No, let it make contact." The beam touched the Meridian's hull, and suddenly the bridge filled with light. But it was not harsh or blinding. It was warm and gentle, like sunlight through clouds. Elena felt a presence in her mind, vast and ancient, but somehow kind. Then the light took shape. A figure appeared in the center of the bridge, tall and graceful, like the architects in the historical records. But this one was made of light and energy instead of flesh and bone. When it spoke, Elena heard the words not with her ears, but directly in her thoughts. "I am the custodian," the figure said. Its voice sounded like music and felt like a warm breeze. "I have waited so long for someone to find us, but finding us is only the beginning. You must prove yourselves worthy of what we offer." Elena stepped forward, trying to hide her fear. "Worthy how?" The custodian gestured, and the bridge around them disappeared. Elena and her crew found themselves standing in a vast space filled with stars. They could breathe and move normally, but Elena knew this was not real. It was some kind of simulation or test. The architects learned that technology alone is not enough, the custodian explained. Many species we helped became powerful, but not wise. They used our gifts to hurt others or themselves. Before we died, we decided that our final inheritance must go only to those who would use it well. Elena looked around at her crew. They all seemed calm, even Dr. Wright, who usually got nervous in strange situations. What kind of test? "Not a test of intelligence," the custodian said. "Your species is clever enough. Not a test of strength. You are brave enough. We will test your hearts. We will see what choices you make when everything is at stake." The space around them changed. Elena found herself standing on the bridge of a ship she did not recognize. Through the view screen, she could see a planet covered in cities and lights. Millions of people lived there, but they were not human. They were tall and thin with blue skin and large eyes. "This is Carolax Prime," the custodian's voice explained. "Home to 8 billion Carolaxians. They are a peaceful people who have never hurt anyone." But their sun is dying much faster than their scientists expected. In 6 hours, it will explode and kill every living thing in this system. Elena studied the displays on the alien bridge. She could see evacuation ships trying to leave the planet. But there were not enough of them. Most of the population would die. Here is your choice, the custodian continued. You have 2 ships. One is the vessel you stand on now. It can save 2 million Carallaxians. The other ship is yours, the Meridian, with your crew aboard. But there is a problem. The display changed to show both ships. Elena could see that the Carallaxian ship was much larger, but moved slowly. The Meridian was fast but small. The dying star is sending out radiation waves, the custodian explained. If the Carallaxian ship tries to save people, it will be caught by the first wave. It will be destroyed, and all 2 million people aboard will die. But if the Meridian uses its speed to shield the larger ship, your crew will survive long enough for the Carallaxian ship to escape with its people. Elena felt her heart sink. And the Meridian would be destroyed? All 60 of your crew would die to save 2 million strangers. Elena looked at her officers. In the simulation, they could all hear the custodian's words. She saw the understanding in their eyes and the fear. But she also saw something else. Determination. How long do we have to decide? Elena asked. You have already decided, said Dr. Wright quietly. We all have, Elena nodded. She had known the answer the moment she understood the choice. We shield. The evacuation ship. The simulation showed the Meridian moving to block the radiation wave. Elena watched her ship die in a burst of light, knowing her crew was dying with it. Even though she knew it was not real, tears ran down her face. Why? The custodian asked. Why sacrifice 60 lives you know and care about for 2 million lives you have never met? Elena wiped her eyes. Because it's the right thing to do. Because those 2 million people want to live just as much as we do. Because someone has to choose to do the right thing, even when it hurts. The simulation faded, and they were back on the real Meridian's bridge. The custodian nodded approvingly. The architects gave the same answer when we asked them this question. But there are more tests. The second test was different, but just as hard. Elena found her crew scattered across a space station that was falling apart. Each crew member was in a different section, and each section had a critical job that needed to be done to save the station. But there was a catch. Only one person could be promoted to captain of a new exploration ship when they got back to Earth. The others would have ordinary jobs. In this test, each crew member could either do their job perfectly and let someone else get the promotion, or they could sabotage the others to make themselves look better. Elena watched through the station's cameras as her crew made their choices. Marcus found a way to make both his section and Sarah's section work better, even though helping Sarah might cost him the promotion. Dr. Wright shared his discoveries with everyone instead of keeping them secret. Even Sergeant Rodriguez, who was not competing for the captain's job, worked extra hard to make sure his teammates looked good. Your people choose cooperation over competition, the custodian observed, even when competition would benefit them personally. This is unusual. Not really, Elena said. We succeed together, or we fail together. That's how humans work. The third test was the hardest one yet. The custodian showed Elena and her crew what the Devourers really were. Not just destroyers, but entities of pure hunger that consumed the very possibility of life and growth. When they finished with the star system, nothing could ever live there again. Not in a million years, not ever. They have eaten half the galaxy, the custodian said. They will reach Confederacy space in 50 years. When they do, every species you know will die. Every world will become empty forever, including Earth. Elena felt sick. Can they be stopped? The architects tried for 1,000 years. We slowed them down, but we could not stop them. Perhaps a different approach will work, perhaps not. But someone must try, or all life in the galaxy will end. The custodian showed them images of the galaxy as it would be after the devourers finished there. Work, empty, silent, dead forever. Here is your final choice, the custodian said. You can take some of our technology and run. Find a way to hide Earth where the devourers will not look. Save your own species and let the others face their fate alone. Or you can accept the full inheritance and the responsibility that comes with it. Become what the architects were. Protect everyone, even if it costs you everything. Elena looked at her crew again. She saw the same expression on every face. Fear, yes, but also resolve. If we run and hide, Elena said, how long before the devourers find us anyway? Unknown. Perhaps 1,000 years. Perhaps 10,000. But eventually, they will find everything. Elena nodded. Running would only delay the end. And if we accept your inheritance, you will have the tools to fight. Knowledge from 1,000,000 civilizations. Ships that can move between stars, like your shuttle moves between planets. Weapons that use the force that holds atoms together. But you will also have the burden of protecting species that cannot protect themselves. You will have to make choices that will hurt your heart, and you may still lose. Elena thought about Earth, with its blue oceans and white clouds. She thought about all the human colonies scattered among the stars. She thought about the other species in the Confederacy, young and hopeful, and unaware of what was coming for them. The architects faced this same choice, Elena said. Yes, and they chose to fight, knowing they would lose, so that others might have a chance to fight better. Elena took a deep breath. She thought about her crew, who had already shown they would sacrifice themselves for strangers. She thought about humanity, stubborn and brave, and too foolish to know when they were beaten. We accept, Elena said. We accept the inheritance and everything that comes with it. The custodian smiled, and for the first time since the tests began, Elena felt hope instead of fear. Then let us begin your education, the custodian said. You have much to learn and little time to learn it. The devourers do not sleep, and neither can we. The moment Elena accepted the inheritance, everything changed. The bridge of the meridian filled with new displays and information streams that connected directly to the ancient fleet. Elena could feel the knowledge of 1,000,000 dead civilizations flowing into the ship's computers. Captain, Sarah said in amazement, our computer systems are integrating with theirs. I'm seeing star charts that show every inhabited world in the galaxy, past and present. The custodian's form became more solid, more real. Now that you have accepted, I can tell you the complete truth. The architects did not choose your species by accident. We have been watching humanity for 300 years, since you first left your home system. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. Watching us. Why? Because you are different from other species in a way that matters. The custodian gestured, and the air filled with images of different alien races. Most intelligent life follows predictable patterns. When faced with extinction, they try to save themselves. When given power, they use it for personal gain. When threatened by something larger than themselves, they submit or they hide. Elena saw images of species she recognized from the Galactic Confederacy. All of them were peaceful and reasonable. All of them preferred negotiation to fighting. All of them would probably surrender rather than face impossible odds. Humans are different, the custodian continued. You have a flaw that other species consider madness. When someone you care about is threatened, you become dangerous. When faced with impossible odds, you become stubborn. When told something cannot be done, you try anyway. More images appeared, these showing human history. Elena saw ancient battles, where small groups of humans held off much larger armies. She saw explorers sailing into unknown oceans, despite warnings about sea monsters. She saw scientists spending their whole lives trying to solve problems everyone said were impossible. Other species call this human recklessness, the custodian said, but the architects recognized it as something else. Hope backed by action. The willingness to fight for others, even when you cannot win. Elena thought about the tests they had just passed. Each one had required them to choose sacrifice over safety, duty over personal gain. You needed someone crazy enough to fight the Devourers. Yes, but more than that. The custodian's expression became sad. The architects tried to fight the Devourers with logic and technology. They built weapons that could destroy stars. They created shields that could protect entire solar systems. None of it worked. The Devourers are not just destroyers. They are entropy made conscious. They cannot be defeated by force alone. Elena frowned. Then how can they be defeated at all? Perhaps they cannot, but they can be opposed. They can be slowed down. And if they are slowed down enough, if someone fights them hard enough for long enough, perhaps a way will be found. The custodian showed Elena new images now. Not of battles or weapons, but of something else. Schools and hospitals, built on alien worlds. Human doctors treating species they had never seen before. Human teachers showing alien children how to read and write. The real inheritance is not the ships or the weapons, the custodian explained. It is this, the knowledge of how to help other species grow and survive. The architects spent millions of years learning how to nurture civilization. All of that knowledge is now yours. Elena began to understand. You want us to become what the architects were. Not just warriors, but gardeners. Yes, help the young species become strong. Teach them to work together instead of fighting each other. Build alliances that can survive even if Earth falls. Make the galaxy ready for what is coming. Sarah looked up from her console with wide eyes. Captain, I'm seeing the full scope of their technology now. These ships don't just carry weapons. They carry everything needed to rebuild entire civilizations. Genetic templates for extinct species. Complete libraries of art and science from thousands of worlds. Seeds and tools and teaching programs. Elena felt the weight of responsibility, settling on her shoulders like a heavy cloak. How many species are left in the galaxy? I mean, besides the ones in the Confederacy? 47 spacefaring civilizations remain active, the custodian replied. Perhaps 200 more that have not yet discovered faster-than-light travel. The rest are gone. Elena did the math in her head. Even if every surviving species joined together, they would still be facing an enemy that had already destroyed millions of civilizations. That's not very many. No, but it is what we have to work with. And humans have surprised us before. Doctor. Wright had been quiet during most of the conversation, but now he spoke up. Custodian, what happened to the other species who found architect technology before us? Surely someone else must have discovered sites like this. The custodian was quiet for a long moment. 17 species found architect ruins over the past 4 million years. We offered them the same choice we offered you. And 3 accepted the inheritance, but used it only for themselves. They became powerful, but isolated. When the Devourers reached them, they fell quickly. 7 tried to use the technology to hide from the coming threat. The Devourers found them anyway. 5 tried to use our weapons to conquer their neighbors, thinking a galactic empire could stand against entropy. They destroyed themselves in civil wars. Elena felt her heart sink. What about the other 2? They chose wisely. They used our gifts to help others and build alliances. They fought bravely when the time came. They slowed the Devourers down by perhaps 1,000 years each before they fell. Elena closed her eyes. Even the best outcomes ended in destruction. So we're going to lose too. Probably, the custodian said gently. But losing and failing are not the same thing. The architects lost, but they did not fail. They preserved what mattered most and passed it on to you. If you lose but pass the torch to someone else, you will not have failed either. Marcus had been studying the technical readouts from the fleet. Captain, what the custodian is showing us ... This isn't just advanced technology. It's impossible technology. These ships can fold space-time. They can turn matter into energy and back again. They can create artificial gravity wells strong enough to stop stars from exploding. And yet none of it was enough to stop the Devourers, Elena said. Because the Devourers are not just strong, the custodian explained. They are the opposite of everything life represents. Where life creates patterns and complexity, they create simplicity and emptiness. Where life builds connections between different things, they isolate everything until it becomes nothing. Elena thought about this. So fighting them is like trying to push back the ocean with your hands. Yes, but if enough people push together, if they push in the right way and at the right time, they might create a wave that flows the other direction. The custodian gestured, and new displays appeared around them. These showed star charts with detailed information about every known species in the galaxy. Elena could see their populations, their technology levels, their political systems, even their psychology profiles. This is your new responsibility, the custodian said. Not just to prepare for war, but to prepare civilizations themselves. Help them become stronger, wiser, more united. Build connections between species that have never met. Create alliances that can survive even when individual worlds fall. Elena studied the charts. Some species were naturally peaceful, but had weak militaries. Others were strong fighters, but distrusted outsiders. A few were advanced in technology, but poor at working with others. It's like putting together a puzzle with pieces that don't want to fit. Exactly. And you have maybe 50 years to complete it. Sarah looked up from her console again. Captain, there's something else. The fleet's long-range sensors are more powerful than anything we have. I'm picking up signals from the edge of Devourer space. They're moving faster than the projections showed. Elena felt her stomach drop. How much faster? Instead of 50 years, we might have 30, maybe less. The bridge went quiet. 30 years seemed like no time at all to unite dozens of alien species and prepare them for a war against impossible odds. Captain, Dr. Wright said quietly, how do we even begin? How do we convince the Galactic Confederacy to listen to us? Most of them have never seen a real war. They won't believe something like the Devourers exists. Elena looked around at her crew, then at the custodian. The ancient AI was watching her with something that might have been sympathy. We start by going home, Elena said finally. We tell Earth what we found. Then we figure out how to tell everyone else without causing a panic that tears the Confederacy apart. And if they don't believe us? Marcus asked. Elena thought about the choice the architects had made millions of years ago. They had faced the same problem, the same impossible task. They had chosen to try anyway. Then we do what humans do best, Elena said. We get stubborn. We refuse to give up. And we find a way to make the impossible happen, even if it kills us. The custodian smiled. Now you begin to understand why the architects chose your species. Welcome to the burden of guardianship, Captain Vasquez. May you carry it more successfully than we did. Around them, the ancient fleet hummed with power, ready to follow humanity into its greatest challenge. Elena looked out at the stars and wondered if 30 years would be enough time to save them all. Elena stood in the command center of the ancient flagship, watching as her crew worked alongside architect systems that responded to human touch like they had been waiting for this moment. 3 days had passed since she accepted the inheritance, and everything about their mission had changed. "Captain," Marcus called from an engineering console that seemed to grow from the ship's wall like a metal tree. "The integration is complete. Our computer systems are now connected to the entire fleet network. We have access to everything the architects knew." Elena nodded, but the knowledge felt like a heavy weight in her mind. She could access star charts showing the locations of every habitable world in the galaxy. She could read the histories of civilizations that died before Earth's sun was born. She could understand technologies that human scientists would need centuries to discover on their own. But most importantly, she could see exactly what humanity was up against. "Show me the Devourer projections again," Elena said. The holographic display filled with a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. A dark wave was spreading outward from the galactic core, consuming everything in its path. Where it passed, the stars remained, but everything else disappeared. No planets, no life, no possibility of life ever existing there again. At current speed, they will reach the Outer Rim territories in 28 years, Sarah reported. The first Confederacy worlds will fall in 32 years. Earth in 35. Elena studied the timeline. It was not enough time to build weapons powerful enough to stop the Devourers. But it might be enough time to do something else. Something the architects had never tried. "Custodian," Elena said to the AI that now resided partially in the Meridian's computers. "Show me the evacuation protocols." New displays appeared, showing detailed plans for moving entire populations between star systems. The architect's ships were not just warships or research vessels. They were arc ships, capable of carrying millions of people across the galaxy. "The architect's final plan," the custodian explained. "If all else failed, save as many as possible and find somewhere the Devourers might not look." Elena shook her head. Running didn't work for the architects. "It won't work for us either. But what if we tried something different?" Dr. Wright looked up from a biological database that contained genetic information for every known species. "Different how, Captain?" Elena pointed at the galactic map. "The Devourers move in a wave, consuming everything as they go. But they've been doing this for millions of years. They follow patterns. They expect civilizations to either fight them directly or run away." "What's the third option?" Marcus asked. Elena smiled grimly. "We give them nothing to consume." The plan that formed in Elena's mind was crazy even by human standards. Instead of trying to fight the Devourers or hide from them, humanity would evacuate entire star systems before the wave arrived. Not just the people, but everything. The planets, the space stations, even the useful asteroids and comets. "It's never been tried," the custodian said when Elena explained her idea. "The technology exists, but the coordination required ... You would need every species in the galaxy working together perfectly." "Then that's what we'll do," Elena said. Sarah stared at her captain. "Elena, you're talking about moving billions of people and thousands of worlds. The logistics alone would be impossible." "The architects moved entire solar systems when they needed to," Elena replied. "Their technology can fold space-time, remember? We can take whole planets through dimensional gates to new locations." Elena pulled up technical specifications that made her head hurt to look at. The architect ships could create artificial wormholes large enough for planets to pass through. They could establish new solar systems in empty space by moving stars themselves. But where would we move everything? Dr. Wright asked. "The Devourers will eventually search the whole galaxy." Elena pointed to a region of the galactic map that showed empty space between the spiral arms. There, in the galactic void. The Devourers have never been observed to enter empty space between galaxies. They only consume areas where life has already existed. Marcus was running calculations on his console. Captain, what you're suggesting? We would essentially be rebuilding galactic civilization in a place where no life has ever existed. Creating something completely new. Exactly. Something the Devourers have never encountered before. The custodian was quiet for a long time. When it finally spoke, there was something like wonder in its voice. The architects never considered this approach. We were too focused on preserving what already existed. You want to create something entirely new. Elena nodded. But we can't do it alone. We need every species in the Confederacy to agree. We need them to trust us with their entire civilizations. Over the next week, Elena and her crew worked with the custodian to refine the plan. It would require the construction of massive evacuation fleets using architect technology. Every inhabited world would need to be carefully transported to new locations in the galactic void. New star systems would have to be created from scratch using stellar engineering techniques that pushed the limits of even architect science. Most challenging of all, it would require unprecedented cooperation between species that had never fully trusted each other. The Yalanti will never agree, Sarah said, reading through diplomatic files. They've been isolationists for 200 years. They barely participate in Confederacy meetings. The Kreks might agree, but only if they're given leadership roles, Dr. Wright added. And the Zephyrians will want guarantees that they're cultural. Sites can be preserved exactly. Elena looked at the list of 47 surviving civilizations. Each had different needs, different fears, different reasons to distrust the others. Convincing them all to abandon their homeworlds based on the word of one human captain would be nearly impossible. We start with Earth, Elena decided. If humanity agrees to the plan, other species might follow our example. The journey back to Earth took 2 weeks, even with the architect fleet's faster-than-light drives. Elena used the time to prepare her report and think about how to explain everything to the people who mattered most. When they emerged from hyperspace near Earth, Elena was amazed to see how small her home world looked compared to the ancient ships that followed her. The architect fleet dwarfed anything humanity had built, a testament to technologies beyond current understanding. Earth control to UES Meridian, came the voice from the communication array. Please explain the nature of your escort. Our sensors are detecting massive unknown vessels. Elena took a deep breath. Earth control, this is Captain Vasquez. I need to speak with the Confederacy Council immediately. What I have to tell them will change everything. The next hours were a blur of meetings, explanations, and demonstrations. Elena stood before the assembled leaders of Earth's government and the Confederacy representatives stationed there. She told them about the architects, the Devourers, and the choice humanity now faced. Some believed her immediately when they saw the ancient ships and their impossible technologies. Others demanded proof, which the custodian provided by showing them real-time images of Devourer-consumed space at the galaxy's edge. The debates that followed were intense. Some leaders wanted to use the architect weapons to build an impregnable fortress around Earth. Others suggested hiding the whole solar system in another dimension until the danger passed. But Elena kept returning to her evacuation plan. We have a chance to save everyone, she argued. Not just humans, but every living thing in the galaxy. We can build something new, something the Devourers can't destroy. The vote, when it finally came, was closer than Elena had hoped. Earth's government agreed to support the evacuation plan by just 3 votes. But it was enough. Over the following months, Elena traveled to every member world of the Confederacy. Sometimes she took just the Meridian. Sometimes she brought parts of the architect fleet to demonstrate their capabilities. Always she carried the same message: work together or die separately. Slowly, painfully, the galaxy began to unite. The Ilanti agreed when Elena showed them how their isolationist tendencies could be preserved in the galactic void. The Krex demanded leadership roles and got them, becoming chief coordinators for the evacuation fleets. The Zephyrians received guarantees that their cultural sites would be the first things moved to safety. Construction began on a scale never before attempted. Architect fabrication technology was shared with every species, allowing them to build evacuation ships using principles that rewrote the laws of physics. Stellar engineers began planning new solar systems in the empty space between galaxies, but the most important work was diplomatic. Elena found herself traveling constantly, mediating disputes between species, solving logistical problems that seemed impossible, and always reminding everyone what they were working toward. "You've changed," the custodian observed during one of their planning sessions. "When we first met, you were a ship captain. Now you're something else." Elena looked out at the fleet of ships under construction around Earth. Vessels from dozens of different species working side by side, building something that had never existed before. "I'm what humanity becomes when we have something important to protect," Elena said. The work continued. Years passed. The galactic evacuation plan took